Hi guys, welcome back, and today I am going to be sorting out firmware and updating ESCs and just doing an overall check on my settings, and I'm going to put Betaflight 4.2 and do all the nice latest stuff to my flight controller and see if I can get some of the gremlins out of this machine and see if that's a good setup for this particular build. So I'm hoping to improve some of the flight characteristics. I don't really feel like tuning anything out of this firmware because I hear the new stuff is quite nice. So let's go to the bench and start fixing this little bad boy out. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to remove my propellers because propellers hurt. And when you're doing any work on the bench, plugging your quad in on the bench, especially when you're working with firmware, you don't want any potential glitches to chop your fingers off. Now my propellers are off, I can go ahead and plug my quad into my computer through the USB port. Very gently, and there it is. And now I can open up Betaflight. Okay, so now I'm in Betaflight and I have connected to my flight controller. I'll do that again just so you can see how it is. You need to select the correct port, click connect. It'll connect to your flight controller like so, and my drone is moving there. The first thing I want to do is I want to back up my settings. So I will click on the CLI button on the left hand side and I will type in dump space all, press enter, and that gives me all of my settings. There you go, that's my entire settings from my current quad, and I will click the save to file button in the bottom right hand side and save this as Blackie 4.1 last flight. Okay, once I have that saved in my documents, I now know that I can revert to this if something goes wrong or if I need to go back to this current status. When you do the dump all, it automatically adds in some other information at the top, so like the version and your board, and the version's 4.1.3 and my board's the F405 STD with the custom defaults provided by the manufacturer. So that is pretty cool. So now that I have that, I can then go into, I can disconnect from Betaflight and click on the update firmware button. Just takes me to the firmware flasher button. So in here you can choose whether you just want to release and release candidates. I'm just going to choose my Maytech F405 STD board. There it is, Maytech F405 STD, and I'm going to go to the latest version, which is 4.2.0, which was released 4 days ago. I'm going to do a full chip erase, so I don't want to keep any settings from my previous version, and I'm going to click load firmware online, and that will give me, it'll download the firmware and will show me this information. So the release notes for this. Now before you flash over, head over to the wiki page and install the latest version of configurator. 4.2 requires configurator version 10.7.0 or higher. I've already done this, so I don't need to follow that step. And then we need to go and read the tuning notes to see if there's anything specific that we may want to do to make our quad fly optimally. So you can see all of the changes that have been brought in by version 4.2. Yeah, and it says it should fly really well with no defaults, no modifications on both quads. Great stuff. Yes, quick settings. So they provide some quick settings for different styles of quads and flyers out there. So if you want to do pro racing, very aggressive, or just fast freestyle, HD for smooth, flow, cinematic for slow turns, etc., etc. I'm probably going to go with the freestyle one, so I'll grab these settings in a minute. The following tuning suggestions may help minimize motor random wobbles in HD footage. D-min, da-da-da. So this is an interesting one. I've seen this one quite recently on the forums, and this is exactly what I thought that could be one of the issues. Interesting. I hadn't read this before. Try thrust linear, dialism D-min, defaults. Okay, enable all the others recommended new features all in one go. Bounce back. So I'm going to read through this later. I just want to see if there's anything particular that needs to be done. That's fine. I'll go through this first with defaults and then see how it behaves and come back to this and read up on any issues that I encounter there. There's so much information, it's just going to cause some confusion. So I've loaded my firmware online. I don't need to go into DFU mode because this is a modern flight controller. It should go in automatically. So I'm going to click flash firmware. It reboots into DFU mode and starts racing and flashing the firmware onto the board. Okay, so it has now flashed the firmware. I am going to connect to it now normally. And the first thing you're going to be asked is, there are custom defaults for this board available. Normally a board will not work properly unless custom defaults are applied. This is their normal new unified target approach to flashing, well, to the configuration of the actual flight controllers themselves. So each manufacturer will have their own custom defaults, which just puts in the custom pin assignments that each manufacturer uses and specific settings for gyro alignments, etc. So we must apply that. So we'll apply that, reboot, you've got to reconnect again. Just wait for a moment while it reboots. Okay, now it's going to ask you to calibrate your gyro. So I'm just going to remove this for a minute. My table is not very straight, but I'll show you what I do to sort of calibrate things up. I'll actually calibrate it 3 different times. Not that it makes much of a difference, but my table's like 0.7 degrees off in one of the axes. 0.9. Doesn't matter. That's fine for me. I fly acro, so accelerometer being slightly off is not going to kill me. There you go. So that is now calibrated, and now I can go on to the configuration. So this is where the interesting part comes in. In my case, I do not wish to set up modes and receivers and certain configuration parameters all over again. So I am going to go into find my dump, which I just created. I am going to open that with a text editor. And I'm going to search for the parameters I need for my receiver, etc., and dump them in. So resource serial, these are all just pin stuff, DMAs, memory access, servos, mixers, leave the features there, beacon, serial. So this section here, that is my configuration for all of my peripherals. I shall copy this, go to my CLI, paste it in, save, reconnect, and my receiver tab will be configured, and my receiver options here will be configured, and my ports will be configured. As you can see, my tramp's there. So hardware wise, nothing is changing. The board's the same, the connections are the same, so I can just paste in my serial options into there. Now let's go and pick up the modes. My LEDs I don't use, it's quite self-explanatory in the configuration file. Colors, auxiliaries, so I'll grab these two and pop those in. These are my switches. Save again. Go back here. Adjustment ranges. That looks pretty default. These are pretty, I've put these in before. Let's go back in and just check. Just go back in here, paste those in, save again, go back here. My VTX tables, they can go back in because they probably haven't changed either. If there's something wrong later, I can always revert back. Grab my, that seems to be default, RX fail, it's my fail safes. Let's put those in. This gyro, don't need any of that. VBATs. Set Flysky, telemetry disabled, OSD warnings. That's my OSD. Here's my VTX stuff. Let's pop the VTX stuff in. I'll redo the OSD because I didn't really have it configured properly. Display ports, don't need that, don't need this. Camera control, that's all the same. Gyro, RC device, gyro. Profiles, don't need any of this. Profile 1, 2. I think from here on it's just rates. I'm not going to do rates. I'll set this up all manually. Just run quickly. What am I missing? Let's feed forward, determs, demins, acros. These are profiles. From here, I think I'm missing something. It's my OSD placements, telemetry stuff, IBUS sensor, whatever. Runaway takeoff prevention is on, that's by default. GPS rescue mode, reboot characters, auto disarms, beeper frequencies, VBATs, that's all the same. Failsafe align board, that's fine. PWM protocols, I'll set that all now. That's my serial RX stuff. I actually need this. Okay. Okay, so now once that goes in, I should have D-Shot 600, that's fine. I'll turn on my, none of that. Bidirectional D-Shot, yes. Motor idle, I'm going to do 6. Save and reboot. Configuration. There's my serial IBUS. All my flags. My modes are there. You see, I don't have to set any of this stuff up again. My OSD, I don't care, so that's default at the moment. I'll set that up later. In terms of configuration, 8K, 15%. Let's save and reboot. And now we gotta go and see if my D-shot, bidirectional D-shot is working. So I've got 100% error. There you go. See if my motors are fine. Right, left, left. Motors are fine. VTX stuff is fine. Channel 3. I'm gonna go to channel 5. 200 milliwatts. And save. All that stuff. And there you go. So now I have a quad which is basically set to defaults, and I can now apply the setting that's in the wiki for the fast freestyle. So grab this, go back here, go to the CLI, paste that in. There was some error there. I went too fast to see what it was. Let's apply that again. Okay. I think we are now ready to go and fly.